It's my pleasure to introduce our speakers today from the San Diego Regional EDC. We have Kate Gallagher, who's the Senior Manager of Economic Development, and Bree Burris, Flex MBA Class of 2020 and Director of Marketing and Communications. Thank you, Bree and Kate. We're so excited to have you this evening.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thanks for joining us for an after-hours session on the San Diego economy. Bree and I are happy to be here. A little bit about what we're going to go over today is I will start with just kind of a broad overview of the San Diego economy. I'll highlight some key companies. I'll talk a little bit about some of the industries that we have here, some of the impacts of COVID-19 on our local economy, and then I'll pass it over to Bree, who's going to really dig into some of the workforce needs that we see, specifically, hopefully relevant to you all in terms of the type of talent that companies are looking to hire, some of the job openings that we're seeing and the job growth that's happening in the region. And then we'll end with some Q&A. So give Bree and I about 20 or so minutes to get through some slides with you all and throw those questions into the chat as they come up. And we'll try to get to everything when we get through the slides. So with that, I'll just go ahead and get started. I wanted to provide a little bit of background on our organization. And Alice, thank you for getting the full name correct. It really doesn't happen often. It's kind of a mouthful. So we work for the San Diego Regional Economic Development Corporation, again, EDC for short. The organization itself has been in San Diego since 1960. The purpose and mission of the organization has shifted a little bit over the years, but for the most part, we remain focused on supporting economic growth in the region of San Diego. We are funded by, for the most part, private sector investors, as we call them. These are really members who are contributing to the mission of supporting a stronger economy in San Diego. And we're a lean team of 22. So Bree and I have both been with the organization for about 5 years. I am on our economic development team, and I actually oversee all of the organization's local talent development programs. And so most of my job is to work with our local education institutions, better connect them to industry, provide insight from industry so that we can ensure people who are graduating from our local education programs really have access to and are prepared for the quality job opportunities. And Bree, I don't know if you want to just do a really quick intro of yourself before I dive into the other portions of my slides.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Again, Bree Burris, Marketing Communications Director with EDC and a proud Rady alum. I just wrapped up my MBA in December and I'm looking really forward to a formal celebration in June, but just glad to be back in what feels like home. So thank you for having us, Alice and team.
Awesome. Okay, and just a little bit more about the types of services that EDC provides. I think it's helpful context as we dig into the local economy. So really the purpose of our organization is to serve as a resource for companies that are looking to grow in San Diego. And so we, throughout the year, work with around 150 to 200 companies on really specific projects that range from the variety of services that you see on the screen. And so really we are a connector for companies, and they come to us with a variety of challenges that they might be facing. And our team, with our knowledge of different organizations and companies, are able to support companies in their growth here. And we also are really providing, or gathering rather, industry insight to really understand how our economy, our local economy, is shifting and changing. And really our mandate is to develop programs and initiatives that support economic growth and really create an environment where businesses can grow and thrive in San Diego. So our work is ever changing. My role, and Bree can attest to this too, is constantly having to adapt because our economy is constantly having to change and adapt. And that's never been more true than over the last year when our entire society was rocked by the pandemic. And so I'll just start with a little bit of background on the San Diego mega region, as we call it. So San Diego County is home to around 3.5 million people. And within that county, there are 18 smaller cities. But for the most part, we describe our region as this binational mega region. And that is because the relationship that the San Diego economy has with Imperial County and Baja California they're inextricably tied together, and our success, depends on the success of the surrounding economies. That said, San Diego County as a geographic area is about the size of Connecticut, which is shocking to a lot of people to learn, since a lot of people, if they're not from San Diego, just think we're a suburb of LA. And so with a gross regional product of $250 billion, San Diego County would actually rank as the 25th largest state. We're the 4th largest county from an output standpoint in the state of California, and the state of California is like the 5th largest economy in the world. So we're really contributing to a lot of the economic output of the state as a whole. A little bit more on the binational mega region, as we call it. It's really outlined here on the map. You see within this region, we have 2 international airports. We have 3 land ports of entry, 2 seaports. Those land ports of entry include the San Ysidro border crossing, which is the busiest border crossing in the Western Hemisphere. 135,000 people on average in normal years cross that border back and forth each day. And really, our relationship to Mexico and the economy in Tijuana in particular is one that has been around for a long time. That working relationship, for the most part, has meant it has really existed within the manufacturing industry. So a lot of companies have contract manufacturing down in Tijuana. There's really, really advanced manufacturing and assembly plants in Tijuana that products are going to crossing the border multiple times between San Diego and Tijuana before they're finished. And this is anything from medical devices, audio and visual equipment, electronics, you name it. But in recent years, Tijuana has really become a tech hub in its own right, and we see this manifesting in the number of co-working spaces that are showing up in Tijuana, incubators, and even larger more tech-forward companies who are starting to open up centers of excellence around things like software development. And this includes most notably Thermo Fisher, which operates their software center of excellence down in Tijuana, which they opened in 2016. Our economy as a whole really can be broken down in the simplest terms into these 4 key buckets. We have our traded economies, which is our innovation industries, hospitality, and defense. These are our traded economies because these are those that are bringing in new wealth to the region, and that's opposed to the local economy, which is really population serving. And so think, within the innovation economy, we have our tech industries, aerospace, as you see them listed there on the side, versus our local industries, which are more focused on like hospitals, governments, education, that sort of thing. The innovation economy is really what is driving growth in the San Diego region. And as I mentioned, this even though it looks like a small piece of that pie, one job in the innovation economy supports 2 jobs elsewhere in the economy, because there are so many pieces, other industries that are supporting the growth and spurring innovation within San Diego. And so we're going to focus on the innovation economy for the remainder of the presentation for the most part. And we want to highlight just some 3 key industries that we think will be hopefully interesting to you all, that are really have a really strong presence in San Diego. So I'm going to start with defense, because San Diego started as a sleepy Navy town, and our defense cluster continues to play a critical role in the region's innovation and military ecosystems, while also supporting U.S. National security priorities. And I will say, while shipbuilding still remains a pretty prominent industry, the ways in which our local companies are supporting the military have adapted and changed as technology continues to advance. So with that, we see growth of industries like cybersecurity, unmanned systems, and a lot of that work is really being led by a lot of our defense contractors. You see some of them listed here: Northrop Grumman, Booz Allen Hamilton. They're a consulting firm. Most of their clients are in the defense space. And San Diego is, one of the it's home to the largest concentration of military assets in the country, and that includes, from anything from Navy ships to the largest federal military workforce in the country as well. All in all, we're talking about 350,000 jobs that are impacted by this industry, and that's about 22% of our gross regional product. And so the significance of the defense industry within our local economy is undeniable. And then we have a slide here on technology, which I think can be a really broad term. But again, actually, San Diego's tech industry would not be what it is today without the presence of the military. Most or many of our largest, what are now considered tech companies, actually just had their start as defense contractors. The best example of that is the company that needs no introduction, Qualcomm, which was founded in 1985. And for those of you who don't know, is really the company that is powering your smartphone and is now leading in the implementation or moving us in the direction of 5G, artificial intelligence, and just generally a leader in the industrial Internet of Things as we increasingly live in a connected world. So this is wireless technologies is a huge piece of our local economy. Viasat is another great example of that. They are another company who has started as a primarily defense contractor and has moved into really the commercialization space. Viasat, most notably, I think, provides Wi-Fi connectivity on Air Force One. They also recently landed a contract to provide Wi-Fi service for JetBlue. So as you're flying JetBlue, you're using Viasat technology. Some other companies we have listed here is Intuit, maker of TurboTax. Cubic, if you don't know Cubic, they are operating the technology that processes payment systems for most of the largest transportation systems in the world, actually, including London, Chicago. And so if you're traveling on any of those transportation systems throughout the world, you're using San Diego made technology. Sony, everybody knows, but then we have some smaller companies too, especially in the tech space, that are really contributing to a really strong startup ecosystem. Just to name a couple of these, Too Simple is an autonomous trucking company. So they're really a leader in autonomous trucking, which obviously will completely change the way that, in terms of logistics and the movement of goods and services throughout the world. Measurable is another great startup story. They have a SaaS platform that collects, manages, and reports on sustainability data for real estate projects. And so with the rise of this technology industry, San Diego's not traditionally been a city where we have a lot of consumer-facing brands. So, it takes people like Bree and I to share the stories of some of these companies that are lesser known to the average household. However, in the last really 5-6 years, we've seen a pretty significant influx of the brands that we all know, such as Amazon, Google, Apple recently made a big announcement about a bunch of new jobs they're bringing to San Diego. I think that announcement came this week. And so larger tech companies really are starting to take notice of San Diego as a place where they want to grow their own business. And this will be the last sort of major industry cluster that I cover. San Diego is a top life sciences market in the country. This is probably not news to any of you, being at UCSD, which is really within the heart of the life sciences cluster in San Diego. But we are right up there in terms of a life sciences market with hubs like Boston and the Bay Area. And this was a really intentional investment made by leaders of our city, dating back to the 60s when they zoned the Torrey Pines Mesa specifically for research and development. And that was a decision that has led to one of the most dense clusters of research and specifically in the life sciences throughout the country. And so this happened around the time that Salk and Scripps and UCSD actually were founded, and it's really just pulled in so many people and investment into this area. And the commercialization of the technologies that are coming out of our research institutions and our universities continues to propel this industry within medical devices, pharmaceuticals, genomics. And so just to name a few, again, key employers down here, Illumina, who I'm sure you all are aware of, they've brought the total cost of the sequencing the human genome down from $300,000 in 2005 to less than $1,000 today. So that's in a span of just about 15 years that they were able to do that. And I think that they're getting now closer to about $100 of sequencing a whole human genome. Another company, Dexcom, they're really revolutionizing the diabetes care by allowing diabetes patients to continuously monitor their glucose levels from their phones. And Luna DNA is a really awesome startup story. If you're not familiar with them, founded by actually a former Illumina employee. They're using blockchain technology to encrypt genetic data, and they compensate consumers for providing that data, and the purpose being to build a stronger genetic data library for research purposes. And so beyond that, and just really in general, San Diego companies have really played an active role in helping our local economy and really the world respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. So in addition to seeing a lot of companies not in the life sciences pivot to support the effort against COVID-19 in development of PPE or hand sanitizer, we've also seen some of our life sciences companies really stepping up to create therapeutics and diagnostics, contributing to vaccine development, that sort of thing. And this was made very apparent in the last quarter of 2020, when San Diego received over $2.5 billion in VC investment, 3/4 of which went to life sciences and healthcare companies. And so the role of these companies just being in our backyard, they're not only supporting our local economy, but really rippling into the global economy. And finally, for my slides, before I pass it over to Bree, I just want to talk a little bit about the impact of COVID-19 on our local economy. Obviously, the impacts of the pandemic, were felt by everyone, really in every way, including how businesses operate. And that for EDC has been a key focus of ours. A significant portion of our team over the last year set aside their time to provide advising for companies who were experiencing challenges, to advise on like how to submit a PPP loan and what's the current regulation, what are the grant programs coming out that exist to help me. And so we've really been trying to stay on top of the ways in which our local economy has been impacted. San Diego was by no means insulated from the impacts of COVID-19. We, just like most other metros, experienced record high unemployment and widespread business closures. As of January, there was around 37% less companies in operation than the same time the year prior. Many of those companies, unfortunately, will likely not make it. We don't have hard numbers yet on how many companies are going to survive. But small businesses in particular were hit especially hard. The chart that you see here is from January 2021, and this is really when we started to see some semblance of a recovery starting to happen. And you'll see the highest line there, those are high-paying jobs, and they had all but recovered as of January of this year. And it's just a very different story for some of our lower wage workers. There's still about 30% fewer lower wage jobs than as of January than there was at the same time the year prior. And this was not particularly surprising. And when you think about the types of industries that were hit hardest, like retail and hospitality and the service industry, those industries employ a large number of low wage workers. I think that the good thing, though, is that as of late, in the last month, we've really seen an uptick in consumer spending. An interesting statistic that I read from our research team was that the U.S. personal savings rate peaked at an all-time high in April of last year, and that was at 33.7%. And the previous record was 17.3%, and that was in 1975. And so what we're seeing happen as consumer spending does start to uptick is that people are getting outside more. They're maybe dipping into that savings that they've been working on over the last year. And that's really leading to more job growth in our local economy, in a lot of those locally serving industries that I talked about earlier. Since January, hospitality in particular added about 5,000 jobs, and restaurant sales jumped by 10% in March alone. And so I think the message here is that we are definitely in a position to be cautiously optimistic, understanding that there's going to be some lasting impacts from the pandemic. And I'm going to, at this point, pass it over to Bree to talk about some of the things that we might see remain as we start to move towards what is the next normal.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kate. So I'll jump in here. EDC is conducting an ongoing survey of more than 200 local employers here in San Diego into all of 2020 and even into 2021. And our hope is to just gauge the changing business landscape within the region. We know that our economy was turned upside down. So what does that mean for at a future state? What does that look like in our new normal, as it pains me to say? So two key learnings from our first round of survey work, which again will continue on into the year, so stay tuned. Kate touched on this, but firstly, everything is different, but we're optimistic. So we know that businesses have fundamentally changed, the way they do business, the way that they work, the place in which they work. And yet we learned that most companies are really optimistic about the way in which they have pivoted and have emerged at what is the end of this pandemic, even stronger than before. So notably, about 87% of our innovation companies who were surveyed believe that they will emerge stronger after having taken on new innovation, new adaptive behavior. And second is really about talent, the talent landscape. The pandemic has leveled the playing field for markets aiming to attract the best and brightest minds, and that isn't necessarily a good or a bad thing. Our survey showed that about 37% of candidate outreach or talent attraction efforts have expanded beyond our local region. And that means that 39% of firms surveyed are more confident in their ability to attract talent because they have a bigger pool to do so, because their workforce can work anywhere. And of course, the shift to remote work is both a good and a bad thing as well. There has been some signs of pessimism in that 45% of survey respondents hiring new employees during the pandemic noted that it was more difficult than before, compared to just 18% that said it was easier. So taking a closer look there, we know that remote work is the new standard. It is no longer a company advantage. It's no longer what a recruiter can say, we allow for remote work, so choose us. Instead, it's the normal. So with that, it is, again, both a benefit and a threat to employee retention, and we'll get into some of that. So Kate, we'll jump to the next slide. So at no surprise, a struggle for recruitment, at least within the San Diego market, is and likely will be for years to come our cost of living. So when we talk with recruiters and ask, well, what are you doing to really sell San Diego? We're learning as part of this survey work that now it is about the individual benefit, like personal professional development opportunities or cost of living, as I mentioned, which hurts us, right? And then a culture of work-life balance. So this actually differs, these three top starred pieces. You could flip these upside down in about 2017. Before, when we did a similar survey, talent noted that it was most important to them to have a regional ecosystem of innovation that in order for them to move there. So it's just an interesting look that COVID, I think, has made us all look inward and do some self-care and self-awareness building and pay attention to what our employer can do for us in the way of development and growth and balance. So we'll jump to the next slide. So what does all of that mean to you in this virtual room? So we sourced some data from LinkedIn, and we wanted to take a look at San Diego job postings that included the word MBA. And we know that not all those on screen are MBAs as I was, but if you look at the job titles, it is very inclusive of many in the room, from finance to accounting to business analytics. You'll note that MBAs are largely leading very technical teams, and there are quality wages and tons of job postings still available despite the environment in which we're in. So wanted to, of course, flag that. I'll go next. And then, true to Rady's spirit of entrepreneurship, at no surprise, the top job titles for Rady graduates per LinkedIn are founder, co-founder, CEO, and president. So you should all be very proud for what's to come. And Rady grads are also working in San Diego's highest growth industries, those that Kate ran us through, showcasing just how applicable the skill sets you and I learned are going to be put to work within the workforce if they're not already, if you're a flex evening student. And then lastly, Rady grads are very well represented in San Diego's most reputable and high growth companies, those that Kate ran through, of course, Qualcomm, Illumina, Thermo Fisher, BD, and many, many others. So to really close us out, I wanted to share some resources available to you that can help put this 20-minute spiel into one place. So in 2017, very proudly, my team launched what we call San Diego Lifechanging, all as a means of attracting and retaining talent by telling these very stories, by breaking the myth that San Diego is a sleepy beach town of burritos and craft beer, and instead sharing the story of innovation and the fact that we can keep up, if not beat out, the likes of Silicon Valley and Boston and New York City and Seattle and our competitive peer metros. So we had to look inward and say, how do we tell this story? And we realized that San Diego, apart from the tagline, America's finest city, which, what does that mean? We didn't have a brand. We didn't have an identity that really summarized all that we were and all that we offered in the way of work, live, and play. So we created San Diego Lifechanging, which is a play on our lifestyle, our life sciences, and the fact that our region, unlike our competitive metros, we're mission driven. We care. We found companies that are moving the needle that impact people's lives. And it's because we have a quality talent pool of people who care. So the campaign, as we call it, the brand San Diego Lifechanging, is helpful to this audience because I'll admit, bias aside, it really is the only one-stop website or digital tool that details what it's like to live, work, and play within the San Diego region. So we have a very active social media presence. You can hop onto Instagram now and follow SD Lifechanging, and a dedicated following of about 10,000 people, which is really exciting. We also have san diego lifechanging.org, which, Kate, if you jump to the next slide. So san diego lifechanging.org includes a company map, which goes from Oceanside down to Chula Vista and into Mexico. That includes our major tech, life sciences, and lifestyle companies. Lifestyle is surf, craft beer, golf clubs, you name it, that San Diego is innovating very actively. And then a job board, which is actively updated by recruiters here in town. So please take a look. And lastly, and new to the tool is a neighborhood breakdown. And when I say neighborhoods, I don't mean cities, the 18 cities that encompass San Diego County, but I mean down to the neighborhood, North Park, South Park, Bird Rock, up into North County. And it summarizes the attitude of the neighborhood, the cost of living, the median rent, the walkability score, the coffee shops and the companies that are within those neighborhoods. And again, all of these things, while very useful to many of you who live and work in San Diego and are just looking for your next career move, they're especially relevant to someone who decides, hey, if I can work anywhere, why don't I move to San Diego? But it's so big, 72 miles of coastline. Where should I live? Where should I work? Where are the major employment centers? All of that is available on the website. So as you can tell, we're really proud of the tool and encourage you to follow along. So I'll close this out. EDC is hiring, and we would be remiss not to tell you that. We are hiring for 2 full-time positions, one a more entry-level undergraduate role in research and data, and then another actually working on my team, a managerial role with about 3 years experience. And then we're hiring for summer interns that begin in June and they run to December. These are paid internships in marketing, economic development, which is our core business support, which is especially relevant to this audience. And then lastly, for research. So our URL is posted there and we'll send these slides around after the fact. So please give us a look and we would love to chat further. So we'll open it up now to questions from the audience. And we just thank you so much for having us. And thank you, Alice, for being a wonderful liaison.
Thank you, Kate and Bree. Well, if folks have questions, you can feel free to put them in the chat. We can also unmute you if you'd like to ask the question directly.
Can I ask the audience a question? Start it off, break the ice. What was something that surprised you about San Diego that maybe you didn't know before?
I'll jump in here. That stat that you guys posted about the salary for medium, different ranges of different positions. I mean, going into a marketing track, if you will, it was nice to see. But no, I thought, I don't really necessarily have a question, but just like a really great presentation overall. I think I have never seen anybody report on the economics of San Diego before. And I think that if they had, it might have just been with a focus on some of the biotech firms or the life sciences, which, you know, like we hear about a lot, but it's really great to see what you guys are doing for like the greater spread of San Diego. And it's just really nice to be able to look at like our own economic changes. Also, I think the graph that Kate had presented, just showing how the high earning roles were basically back up to where they were. And, you know, it was really shocking and really sad, but really insightful to see, you know, how like the middle and low income demographic are still really struggling at less than 30% of where they were before. So yeah, just in general, like, thank you for sharing the information. Yeah, really great presentation, you guys.
Thank you, Heidi. Twice in 1 week on the screen with you.
I actually had a question about like sort of, it's kind of like a bigger picture question, I guess, but I was curious, like I heard that a new line opened up in San Diego that kind of like links UCSD to like downtown.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a subway line or something. Yeah. So
Trolley. Mm-hmm.
yeah, the trolley. So I was like kind of curious about like, as you know, San Diego expands and stuff, how does that like sort of impact like more investment in like public transport and things like that?
Great
Especially
question.
like if you're working in downtown or you're living in La Jolla, it's like, you know, pretty difficult to get around without a car.
Absolutely. I can start, Kate, and then jump in where I miss. So the blue line that will extend, that will connect what is the existing trolley that begins at near the border. It will connect into downtown, and then from downtown into UTC, which, as many of us know, pre-pandemic are among the most traffic-filled freeways in our region, and frankly create a ton of barriers for folks who live in South County or who even commute from over the border to reaching what are major employment districts like that of UTC and downtown. So as an economic development organization, I'll admit transportation is not our specialty. However, when thinking about how are we getting talent to jobs, how are we being inclusive and opening up doors to communities who need these mechanisms to getting to quality, high-paying jobs in innovation clusters, as we described, this is absolutely key. And then I'll also say, and Sylvia or Alice could probably jump in better than I, but UCSD is opening an operation in downtown San Diego. So with that, the trolley line can connect both campuses and will just be integral to the university having a greater impact within our major growth areas as well.
Yeah, so we're opening up an executive education campus on Park and Market. So it'll be right on the blue line, and the trolley will connect the two campuses. But it'll be great to have an executive education space downtown so that we can focus on reaching out to companies who are interested in learning with our Rady faculty.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Yeah, thanks.
I'll just add too on the transportation question. I think that when we talk about the impacts of affordability of San Diego, it's directly connected to our economic opportunity. And so the increased cost of living that we're experiencing in San Diego, it's going to get to the point where people won't be able to afford to live here. And I think that we think about cost of living mostly being driven up by housing, but transportation plays a huge piece in that as well. And so it's something that we're increasingly looking at, is how do we support policies that really increase connectivity of our region. I mentioned we're the size of Connecticut. And so if you're gonna go from South County up to your job in North County, that's a serious commute that is really not sustainable. And so from an economic development standpoint, these things do matter. And I think that the more we can be investing in our infrastructure, such as what's happening with the trolley, it'll only have a positive impact on the overall economy as well.
And downtown is experiencing what we might call a life sciences revolution. There's a significant amount, into the millions of square feet of wet lab space and office space going into downtown, which has traditionally not been an innovation cluster so much as it's been a financial district. So economically, we're really excited about the opportunity. And while we watch many firms go to fully remote for what might be forever, it's life sciences that cannot be remote. So to do some of that, to extend jobs into downtown, and again, to have the connectivity into UTC and avoid some of that traffic is all the better. Any other questions? James, I see you unmuted over there.
Yes, I just want to say hi and thank you very much for the presentation today. The one thing I'm going to push back a little bit on I'll call it the new reality of today. I'm getting calls from students that are 1 and 2 years removed from university that are looking forward to getting back into the office, getting into the boardroom, getting into the seats. And then I'm also talking to managing partners here that are very concerned about the lack of cultural development because they're not in the room. And if you think about how young people are developed, they're developed by people that are 2 and 3 years, maybe they're senior. They haven't figured this thing all out yet. So I'm really getting optimistic for some traffic jams coming back, people going out, having dinners, and seeing people back in offices. I just hope this is not the new reality. I want to see our people.
Yeah, I think, James, what we'll probably end up seeing actually play out is more of a hybrid model, between companies just being wanting to be flexible and offer people an opportunity to work from home sometimes. I think the point here being that the idea that we are all going to go in for a 9 to 5 days a week into an office, that's probably never going to happen again. So for most companies. And so I think that there's just been really an awakening. Obviously, younger people have been open-minded to remote work and have been requesting remote work options for a while. And having put everyone through it has just given everyone the chance to see the benefits of certain types of work that need to be done or that could be better done at home versus things that you can't get outside or unless you go into the office. And 100% collaboration among teams, brainstorming sessions, the amount of times that I hear from even my own colleagues saying, this is something I really wish I could have just walked down the hallway to ask you, is just a piece that you miss when you're not in the office together. And so I think that for most people, we will end up doing some sort of that hybrid model and then really defining like, what is the type of work that happens in the office versus the type of work that is better suited to be done at home.
Hi guys, I have a quick question. So you were showing some of the stats. Have you guys started gathering any data about like people moving out of San Diego and how that could possibly be affecting? Because I know that San Francisco, there's like an exodus right now because of the cost of living, and now people can work from anywhere to a certain degree. So have you guys gotten any data about that in San Diego?
I haven't personally seen the data on that. I know that we just got some new census numbers that you might have seen that showed just in general across the board, there has been a little bit of a dip of people leaving California and heading to places like Texas. That said, I've heard companies, from the perspective of the company and what they're seeing and hearing from their employees, is that they are open to their employees moving, and a lot of them have done so. But there's challenges related to pay. And so especially in California, where wages are higher in California, if you're making California wages and living in Idaho, how does the company balance that? And I think what a lot of companies are doing is using the national average to even out the wages. So they're giving you the option to say, hey, if you want to go live in Idaho, and you can do your job effectively from there, that's great, but you're going to start making the national average, not necessarily the wages that you would be making at a similar job in that state, but the national average for your type of position. So that's how I think some companies are sort of managing that problem.
Mm-hmm. And I'm frantically trying to pull it up, Chelsea. MZ is a nice research consortium, and they do what's called a talent attraction scorecard, which talks about that. What is the migration of talent into states across the US? At no surprise, California stacks fairly low of late as compared to Arizona, Texas, and other lower cost of living markets that still have some of that temperate weather. So we do, at no surprise, lose talent to those regions. However, I have been really surprised to see, maybe I shouldn't be surprised, but that we are getting companies still moving into San Diego and relocating their headquarters into San Diego, because if you pin us against the likes of Silicon Valley, we remain cheaper. And we've done some survey work, and generally it goes to show that our companies are less cutthroat and more collaborative in spirit, and warm and fuzzy almost. That's what I extracted from that survey, but good and bad. We do have one in the chat, Kate, curious about employment opportunities for international graduate students in San Diego. So I know, I can't pretend to be an expert here, but many technology firms go a long way to accommodate international students, knowing full well that the skill sets are there, and it's again, the talent playing field has been leveled. So I have no fear. But Kate, I don't know if you can weigh in on maybe Qualcomm or others.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is that most of the defense companies that I mentioned even in the presentation today will require U.S. citizenship, and sometimes even like a security clearance, so beyond U.S. citizenship. So I would just say avoid the defense companies for those reasons. But otherwise, yeah, what Bree said on the technology companies being open to host or to bringing on international students. Well, thank you everyone for your questions today. We really enjoyed spending some time with you, and Bree and we're drawn to San Diego Regional EDC because of our love for San Diego. So any opportunity that we have to talk about our city and show it off a little bit, the pleasure is ours. So Alice, Sylvia, thanks for having us today. And yeah, you should have our contact information on the slides for anyone who has any follow-up questions. We're very accessible. Apply to our jobs, or if you know anyone, check those out. So thank you all again.